Salutations, Guardians! The Solar Hunter build you've been waiting for is finally here. By harnessing the power of the sun, combined with the stopping power of the Malfeasance, you'll make all who oppose you bask in your radiant glory, scorching them and taking their souls on your violent war path. But before we go any further, while you're here, click that subscribe button as we're on the road to 500 subs. Make sure you ring that notification bell to stay notified of the next video or when I do go live. Hit that thumbs up, like, and leave a comment below on what you would change with this build, if you've tried this build, or what build you want to see next. I do respond to all comments. I also, as I mentioned before, live stream 3 days a week right here on YouTube, Kick, or Twitch. The links will be below and in the description. Swing by the platform you're choosing, hang out, let's run some content together. I do play with viewers. Now that that's out the way, let's get into this build. As alluded to before, this will be based around the Malfeasance hand cannon. Hand cannons just got a buff in Season 22 and will be getting an even bigger substantial buff starting Season 23, making hand cannons even more viable in all content. You pair that with the damage dealing already of Malfeasance, and you just have a death dealer on your hand. With the Malfeasance, in order to get it, you have to do the Corrupted Strike and a few other things. It's a little quest that you gotta do. You have to do some Gambit. I would recommend take some friends. You have to get some wins so when go in there solo dolo. But once you do get it, it is well worth getting. It is an amazing hand cannon. It's gotten buffs besides the hand cannon buffs that I talked about previously. It's just absolutely phenomenal. The intrinsic trait, Explosive Shadow, shoot tainted slugs that burrow into combatants. Stacking enough slugs causes them all to explode, stunning surviving combatants. Strong against unstoppable champions. So it's inherently an unstoppable champion stunner. Plus those tainted slugs that burrow in cause extra damage when they do explode. Now, I will say for this build, the taken predator's really not gonna matter that much unless you're going against taken enemies, so it's kind of niche in that extra trait that you get. But it is a good trait because there is a lot of areas in games where you are fighting taken, so that will help you out a lot. You just don't always get that bonus damage. So there is a little negative to that, but it puts out so much damage you won't even notice what you're missing. Recently, the Malfeasance got an amazing catalyst that grants it an additional 20 points in range while also gaining Vorpal Weapon as a trait. For those unfamiliar with Vorpal Weapon, this trait boosts weapon damage against bosses, vehicles, and enemy players that have their super active. Vorpal is one of the most powerful traits in all of Destiny. This build takes advantage of that damage and gives it even more damage with our exotic armor, the Lucky Pants, and the different modifications we're gonna use to make this build pop. The Lucky Pants pairs perfectly with your hand cannons due to its exotic perk, illegally modded holster, which as reads, when you ready a fully loaded hand cannon that deals kinetic damage or a damage type that matches your subclass energy type, each hit from that hand cannon increases the damage of the next shot for a short time against a combatant. Hand cannons ready faster and are more accurate immediately after swapping to them. Provides a small benefit to the airborne effectiveness stat of hand cannons while the buff is active. So, since Malfeasance is kinetic, it's gonna give you that extra damage buff. Also, since you'll be readying it, you'll get that extra accuracy, and it readies much faster, so swapping weapons isn't as much of a detriment. Now, as I said before, in the description it states that you have to switch to your loaded hand cannon, but there is a little trick that allows you to just bring your ghost up and then put it away and it creates the same effect. But due to our weapon rotation, which will take advantage of solar, scorches, and fire sprites, there is no real need for us to use this ghost trick very often, but there is a possibility that you can use it for this build and others. I will give a disclaimer, there is a 10-second cooldown after the buff from Lucky Pants wears off before you're allowed to do it again. Before we get into rotation of weapons and armor mods, we will take a look at the abilities, aspects, and fragments. We won't be going over the artifact perks or mods in this build because there are none in this season that pertain to it, other than anti-barrier auto rifle to stun those barrier champions, the unstoppable hand cannon. Yes, the Malfeasance is intrinsically a stunner of unstoppable champions. I have it there just in case. You can choose any of the other weapon champion perks that you like. The only other mod that you really need to get from here is the authorized mod for melee. That makes your melee mods only count one charge. So you can get everything that we have in this build. Other than that, the artifact doesn't matter, but in the future, if we're in a season that will make this better and has solar, artifact perks, and mods, I will revisit this build and update it for you. On to the Gunslinger, the abilities, aspects, and fragments. We're going to be using the Golden Gun Marksman, some precision flaming pistol that disintegrates targets with solar light. Your Golden Gun deals massively increased precision damage, over-penetrates targets, and creates orbs of power on precision hits, benefits from being radiant. So with this build, we will be radiant, which radiance causes another damage boost besides our Lucky Pants, besides the Vorpal, besides everything else we're doing. We're going to get an extra boost of damage for being radiant. So radiance, your weapons are enhanced by the power of the Traveler and deal increased damage to combatants. While you're radiant, your weapons pierce the shields of barrier champions and stun them. So if we make ourselves radiant, our other weapons can stun anti-barriers too. But I do have the auto rifle as our anti-barrier champion weapon because that's going to be our opening weapon for our rotation that I'll get through later. On to the abilities. We will be using Acrobat's Dodge. Dodge, perform an acrobatic leap. Upon landing, make yourself and nearby allies radiant. So it'll also make you radiant, but it'll also make your allies radiant. I believe it gives you about a 25% boost to your damage. So you'll instantly start out dealing extra damage. And I could be wrong about that damage stats, don't quote me, but I believe that's what it is, but I do know it's a significant buff. Up next, I'm using triple jump. You can use whatever jump you want, doesn't really matter. I prefer the triple jump. We're gonna use the knife trick, throwing a fan of flaming knives to scorch targets on hit. Now what this does, it starts the scorching process, which is another big part of this build. The target ascends destructive solar light, taking damage over time. Scorch damage increases as the target accumulates more scorch stacks. After enough scorch stacks are applied to the target, they ignite. If they ignite, a large solar explosion which deals damage in an area around the targets and stuns unstoppable champions. So we'll be throwing our knives at them, setting scorch stacks, and then we'll have fragments that also create more stacks to be applied, plus our secondary weapons will add stacks as well, thus causing the possibility of ignitions to happen. That doesn't necessarily mean that they will, but the scorching is what's going to matter more. And for this, I'm going to be using the Firebolt Grenade, a grenade that unleashes bolts of damaging solar light at nearby targets and slightly scorches them. Now, I know you could probably use some other grenades with this, but I chose this one just for the reason that it can scorch multiple targets at a time. And since our Malfeasance is going to be scorching, we need every method to be able to scorch as possible with our abilities and scorching as many enemies as possible, whether it be our knife, whether it be our Firebolt Grenade, whether it be our opening shot with our other weapon we're going to show you in a few. We'll have different ways to create these scorch stacks and hopefully cause ignition, but killing scorched enemies are going to help us as well. So once again, like I said, us scorching enemies as much as possible so we can kill them while they're scorched is a big deal. So I like the Firebolt Grenade. Y'all can tell me in the comments below if there's a grenade y'all think would work better with this, but Firebolt is the one that I found that worked best. Now onto the aspects. We're going to use Knock 'em Down. Your solar supers are enhanced. Deadshot Golden Gun has damage resistance. Marksman Golden Gun has increased duration. Blade Barrage launches more projectiles. While Radiant, final blows with your equipped throwing knife fully refunds your melee energy. So our Golden Gun's going to last longer. That's a big deal. But while Radiant, final blows with your equipped throwing knife, which is our throwing knife we're going to be using to scorch people, will fully refund the melee energy. So we'll be able to throw the knife again and add more scorch stacks, and throw the knife again and make more scorch stacks. It's just perfect synchronization with what we're doing. And for our second aspect, we're going to use On Your Mark. Precision final blows grant you and nearby allies increase weapon handling and reload speed for a short duration. Stacks 3 times. Activating your class ability immediately grants you maximum stacks of On Your Mark. So we'll be jumping in with our Acrobat Dodge, making us and our teammates radiant, automatically getting 3 stacks of On Your Mark, which will increase us and our allies weapon handling and reload speed for that entire duration. So we'll jumping in when I will be giving them extra damage, better weapon handling, better reload speed. It's just a win-win. And because you'll be using your Acrobat Dodge so much, you'll be giving those stacks all the time. And that's not even including the precision kills you create. A cool thing with this build, you can actually have 5 fragments, which is not in very many builds in this game. So with this build, we're going to do Ember of Singeing. Your class ability recharges faster when you scorch targets. Our class ability, Acrobat Dodge, we're going to jump in, we're going to become radiant, we're going to throw our knives, we're going to kill people, we're going to shoot them with our rifle, we're going to throw grenades, we're going to get those scorches. Our class ability is going to be coming back quicker so we can stay radiant longer. Up next, Ember of Searing. Defeating scorched targets grants melee energy and creates a fire spray. So since everything's going to be scorched from our grenade, from our knives, from our guns, from everything that we're doing, we'll be getting melee energy back every time that we kill an enemy that's been scorched. And we'll get a fire sprite, and that fire sprite will come in handy later. But that melee energy is really big, so we can keep those throwing knives going and keep the scorches coming. Up next, we have Ember of Solace. Radiant and restoration effects applied to you have increased duration. So that radiance that we're creating for ourselves, that extra damage boost that we're getting, is gonna last longer. Up next, power melee attacks against combatants make you and nearby allies radiant. So say your acrobat dodge is out, we haven't recouped it quick enough, which we will, you have the ability with your throwing knives, every time you get a kill with your throwing knives, you now gain radiance as well. And lastly, we have Ember of Ashes. You apply more scorch stacks to targets. So all the ways we'll be able to scorch, which isn't as much as if we were just doing regular solar weapon damage all the time, because we'll be using Malfeasance. This gives us more stacks of scorch, which gives us the possibility of causing ignitions or keep people scorched so we can get those fire sprites coming. And I haven't mentioned a fire sprite is a luminous concentration of solar energy when picked up. Fire sprites grant grenade energy. So this will be a way we'll get our grenades back quicker to throw more of those firebolt grenades to give us more scorches. But fire sprites also have another part to play later on in the build. All right, before we get into the mods, we're gonna get into the weapon rotation. Now for my secondary weapon, I am using an auto rifle so I can get those anti-barrier rounds. But for whether it be an auto rifle or another kind of weapon you're using for your secondary weapon, I highly recommend the perk Incandescent. Defeating a target spreads scorch to those nearby. More powerful combatants and opposing guardians cause scorch in a larger radius. So the rotation is you jump in with your dodge, you become radiant, everything runs radiant around you. Throw your grenade, you start scorching things. You throw your knives, you start scorching things. You shoot them with your auto rifle, you start scorching things. You run your whole auto rifle clip, then you switch to your Malfeasance, which gets that boost from Lucky Pants because you just stowed a ready weapon. It's almost immediately ready and you're going boom, 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 wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. All while you're radiant, and your radiant lasts longer than before. So you'll be getting a full set of scorch stacks from all of your scorching abilities, and then you'll be getting the stopping power, those slugs from Malfeasance. In my opinion, this rotation is out of this world. And for the heavy, I'm running the Roar the Bear rocket launcher with incandescent and tracking module, so I have another way to create scorch stacks if I'm just trying to clear out a mob real quick and there's a boss around, a major around. I'll drop that rocket down, kill everything around, scorch everything around, spread that scorch everywhere, and then switch to my Malfeasance that's fully loaded and go boom, 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 and drop the enemy quicker than a bad habit. Let's talk about the stats that go with this build. As always, 100% resilience. 100 resilience is your friend. It just mitigates so much damage. It's worth it, especially as a hunter. You're squishy. Get that 100% resilience on every build. That's just my opinion. Some other people might tell you otherwise, but I think 100 resilience is just necessary. I go here, I build a little bit more into mobility. Hunters, you build in mobility anyway, but I got it up to 85 for the simple reason we want that acrobat dodge to come back sooner. Now we'll have mods that cause it to happen and different effects from things that we're doing that cause it to happen, but this will make it happen even more. So we want that mobility as high as possible. And then of course we want those grenades up as high as possible. Your discipline up as high as possible. 60, 70 is a good spot. We'll be able to recharge that even faster anyway. But you want those grenades to come back as fast as possible so you can have those scorches continually coming. You want the discipline up because it's gonna make it so you get those grenades more. The more ways we can make sure scorch stacks happen, the better. So you want to build into those three stats: mobility, resilience, discipline. All right, let's get into the armor mods for this build. Now, like I always say, as for the general armor mod, select whichever one gives you the most buff in resilience, mobility, or discipline that you need to make your numbers work. So if you need resilience, put in resilience. You need mobility, put in mobility. You need discipline, put in discipline. Resilience should be your first focus, but then whatever else is whatever you're trying to build into depending on your armor. Up first, we have hands-on, gain bonus super energy on melee kills. So those melee kills from our throwing knives are gonna give us more super. Up next, Dynamo, reduces super cooldown when using your class ability near targets. Now we're gonna be diving with the acrobat dodge. We're most likely gonna be somewhat near enemies and be able to proc that Dynamo to give us more super energy. And lastly, we're gonna be using kinetic siphon, which rapid kinetic weapons, final blows, create an orb of power. So those orbs of power are gonna help us so much get our abilities back. So any way that we can create orbs of power, we're going to look into, and Kinetic Siphon is a perfect one because we're going to be using a kinetic hand cannon or Malfeasance. All right, on to our gauntlets. The first mod we're going to use is Focusing Strike. Gains class ability energy when you cause damage with a melee attack. So we're constantly throwing those knives out to try to get scorches. We're constantly going to be getting class energy back, which allows us to do our dodge, which gives us radiance. Up next, Fonts of Focus. Collecting Orb of Power causes you to gain 1 temporary armor charge. You gain bonus discipline while you have an armor charge. Your armor charge now decays over time. So every time we collect an Orb of Power, we get bonus discipline. So it makes up for us not having 100 discipline here. Now, if for some reason you are able to have 100 discipline, you have a 300 build, you build more discipline because you like a little bit more than mobility, then, you know, you could go for something like Firepower, which your grenade final blows create orbs of power. You could go something with like grenade kickstart. Your armor charge is taken away so you can gain extra grenade energy. I don't really think you need that. If I have 100 discipline, I don't try to necessarily go for grenade kickstart, but you can really switch it up here if you wanted to do something else. You wanted to do bolstering detonation or something like that. But I say if you don't have it on 100 on your discipline, go for Fonts of Focus. Then heavy-handed. Your powered melee final blows create orbs of power. So once again, those fully charged melee final blows are going to give you an orb of power, which the orbs of power are going to make it to where you get your abilities back faster. All right, as for the mods for the chest armor, first we're going to use Charged Up. Increases the maximum number of stacks of armor charge you can carry, which we saw before. Having those armor charges are going to make our discipline higher. So having more armor charges at our disposal, since they're decaying, the better. And as for your other mods, you can really use any resistance mod that you want depending on the activity that you're going in. I use Harmonic on here because it's only going to cost 1, and that'll also give us solar resistance, and then I use arc resistance. It really just depends on the activity that you're going against. The one that I mainly use, honestly, is Concussive Dampener. If you're getting a lot of grenade thrown at you, a lot of area of effect damage against you. So Concussive Dampener is always a go-to for me. So if you didn't want to do a incoming arc, solar, void resistance, you can always go for Concussive Dampener instead. But I really like to spread as much damage resistance as possible. Get into leg armor mods real quick. First and foremost, we use a Kinetic Weapon Surge. Your kinetic weapons gain a small bonus to damage while you have an armor charge. Your armor charge now decays over time. So we have those multiple ways we're gonna have armor charges. We have another way coming up. Our Malfeasance will be doing more damage on top of the Lucky Pants, on top of the Vorpal, on top of the Radiance. It just makes it even more powerful than it was. Up next, we have Elemental Charge. Collecting a Fire Sprite, Ionic Trace, Stasis Shard, or Void Breach, or destroying Strand Tangle has an escalating chance to give you armor charge. And so you're gonna be scorching targets and creating those fire sprites. We'll be able to get another armor charge from there. Now with this, if you didn't want to pay attention to the fire sprites, you're not making enough fire sprites doing the build, you can always change it to stacks on stacks instead, and Orb of Power grants you additional armor charge. You can do that as well. Either way is perfectly fine. I'm just trying to make use of those sprites that I'm making, but in the end, stacks and stacks could be a better play. And then up next, I have Recuperation. Replenishes health each time you pick up an Orb of Power. So what this does, every time you pick up an Orb of Power, you get health. Now, instead of doing that, if you wanted to, you could use Better Already. Your health begins to regenerate immediately after picking an Orb of Power. I just don't necessarily like that because yes, regeneration immediately helps, but then you can lose that health almost immediately and not get any regeneration. At least with Recuperation, you get health immediately. So it immediately keeps you alive. But like I said, you could play with these a little bit, and I might even play with them myself, but either Elemental Charge or Stacks and Stacks, either one is perfect. I just want to make use of those fire sprites that we are making. Now, lastly, on to the cloak mods. First, when using Reaper, after using your class ability, your next weapon final blow spawns an Orb of Power. As we've already shown, Orbs of Power are huge from healing us, from giving us our abilities back. Orbs of Power are great, so make sure that you put this on. And what's going to make it even easier to get that Orb of Power, in order to start those replenishing of your abilities, in order to start that healing, we have Powerful Attraction. Automatically collects nearby orbs of power when you activate your class ability. This has actually been one of my favorite new mods in Destiny 2 since Lightfall has occurred. It's just really, really cool. You dodge, you end up getting your abilities back, pretty much. You get health back, pretty much. Whatever you have your orbs of power doing, it'll start happening just because you used your class ability. And lastly, Bomber. Reduces grenade cooldown when using your class ability. Once again, use your class ability, grenade cooldown. You can throw those grenades more, scorch more, cause more fire sprites, cause more stacks, you know the drill. Everyone, that's the build. Every build I make, I have so much fun, and this one was no different. The power of the Malfeasance is on full display and makes this the best Solar Hunter build. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of this build, what changes you would make, and what builds you'd like to see next. Don't forget to click that subscribe button, ring that notification bell, and hit that thumbs up like. Again, swing by the streaming platform of your choosing and come hang out. All links are below. Until next time, click on one of these videos you see above to see more Destiny 2 builds. It's your boy Old Man Sim out. Peace.